Hello, after school professionals. My name is Mary Schone, and I am excited to present a training to you today called Downtime No Longer Effective Transitions. I got my first start in the out of school time field in 2008 as a summer camp counselor, and I haven't really looked back since. Now I am a school counselor, and I love collaborating with my out of school time folks who work alongside me. And I hope that you are able to get some great information from this training. The objectives of this training are to define an effective transition, most importantly, to learn ways to combat behavioral disruptions and boredom that can happen, before school or after school when students have long days, or even in the summer when they might be used to a different type of setting. And finally, we will learn, and maybe even you can practice at home, some concrete transition strategies. So, what is a transition? I'm sure many of you know that it is a time of changing from one thing to another. We have transitions in our lives from adolescence to adulthood, and they can be large or small for students in the after school or out of school time setting. That could be from homework to activity time. I know a lot of after school and out of school time professionals this year have taken on some added duties during virtual learning. So that transition from homework to activity time is especially important. The transition can even be from school to the after school program or after school to home, or even as little as from a bathroom break to the hallway back to the after school area. So I'd love for you to reflect right now to think about all of your transitions, big or small. So starting from the bell rings and the students run down excitedly to the cafeteria to join you for your after school activity. They then go to wash their hands or go to the bathroom, walk back. They get a snack. They have to clean up their snack to get out their computers to start their homework and learning time. Think about each of those transitions that occur in your program from one period of time to another. And I'd love for you to count them up. So go ahead and pause right now and think about those transitions and count them up. You could even write them down so that we have a really solid understanding of all of the moments in which our students are transitioning. And now that you've taken some time to think about the transitions that happen in your program, I want you to think about your own transitions. So one that comes up for me is my alarm ringing in the morning and I have to get out of bed. It's a hard time for a lot of folks. I'm sure it's hard for our students. And I have some strategies that I use to help myself. I think about what I'm going to do that day. I think about what I'm going to have for breakfast. I think about things that I'm going to look forward to. And that helps me get through that transition. Plus, I have the same schedule and routine that I follow every morning. So I want you to think about your own transitions and what might be tricky about them, what helps you to feel more comfortable during a time of transition in your own schedule. And just begin to think about that and how you might be able to help your students in a similar way. Time for another pause. I want you to think about what makes an effective transition. Now that we've thought about all the transitions our students have, and maybe even our own transitions during the day in our lives, what makes those smooth and effective? You can go ahead and pause and think about that. And I have some ideas as well. An effective transition is planned. The adults know exactly what's going to happen. The kids know what's going to happen. Also, an effective transition is one in which the adults start first. So you're planning ahead to make it smooth for the kids, and the kids know exactly what's expected of them once they're ready to start that transition. When working with students, maybe we're transitioning to go outside. I'm grabbing my first aid backpack. I am getting all the items I need to go outside. And that even communicates nonverbally to the kids before you even give a warning or a countdown, or tell them that it's about time to go outside. They're noticing those things and beginning to plan with their own executive functioning what they need to do next. An effective transition involves communication, and that's feed forward instead of feed backwards. You are giving information that the students need to know, what they need to bring with them, how it looks when they're ready to go through to the next step of their schedule. Effective transitions are always as short as possible. Now, we can't take away all transitions, but they are not drawn out. They are as short as they can be so that we can minimize that downtime, that boredom, and those opportunities for, behavioral challenges by being as quick as possible during the transitions. They can also be embedded with academics or learning objectives. You can use what you're doing in your after school program or your before school program or your summer program to incorporate during a transition, whether that's some quick number facts or playing a word game. Those are great opportunities to incorporate what the students might be working on in a fun way. They also include social emotional learning. Most of our learning is social emotional, especially in out of school time. So you can give that feed forward. You can talk about their regulation of their bodies, their management of themselves during that time, how they can work well with others, how they can keep personal space. There are many opportunities to incorporate some SEL into an effective transition. One of my favorite things to do for the next bullet point is a lot of self-talk from the adults. This helps kids develop their prefrontal cortex and their sense of planning. So as I was saying before, if you're getting ready to go outside and you're gathering the materials that you need, there might be students around you who might still be playing or getting ready for their own transition. I would say out loud what I'm preparing. Okay, I need our cell phone, I need our communication devices, I need the binder with the parent contacts, and I need the first aid kit. That way we'll have everything we need to go outside. I would say that out loud so the students can also think about what they would need to plan ahead for that transition. Effective transitions are engaging and they are smooth. So I'm hopeful that you've came up with some of these ideas as well for an effective transition, or you might even have some more of your own. We're going to move right into some tips and tricks that you can use in your transitions in out of school time. Timers are a great way to track visually for students how much time they have remaining. It's important to give warning and time for them to finish up what they're doing to get ready to go to the next thing. Imagine if someone abruptly came into your house and told you it was immediately time for you to make dinner. You had to stop watching the show that you were watching. That wouldn't be very respectful. We want to give time for students to finish what they're doing, finish their thought, and then get ready for the next step of their day. You could use an analog timer. You could use a more visual timer, like a sand timer, depending on the developmental age of your students. But especially if there are kiddos who struggle to transition smoothly, giving a warning and then a visual with a timer is really important. Attention grabbers help those transitions be smooth and also give that feed forward to students. Kids definitely can't have a smooth transition if they're not paying attention to what they're supposed to be doing. So if it's loud and noisy and after a long school day, you can use an attention grabber that you have established with your students to get ready for the transition. Now, attention grabbers, they should be formalized from the beginning of the school year, but you can add them in at any time if you are struggling with transitions. That could be clap a beat. Like if you can hear me, clap. And then the kids clap back. It could be a musical instrument like a chime or a triangle that you use to get the attention of the students. When I was working with my kiddos, I would use a light tambourine shake and they would all look at me so then they could get their next direction. I know chants are really popular and you can make them up with your own kids, like holy moly, guacamole, knock, knock, who's there? Jack and Jill went up the hill. Just make sure you practice them and reinforce when the students do it. And if you don't have everyone's attention, you can repeat it until you do. Another way to ensure an effective transition is to use hand signals. It's important for a lot of our students to have multiple cues for expected behavior. So, not just a verbal cue, but also a nonverbal cue, because maybe there's a lot of noise. It's hard for them to process that input from their ears. So, we give them something visual that they can use to know what's going on. So, maybe you have one finger up for quiet. Students can make a T with their finger for bathroom. Maybe there's a different hand signal for preparing for cleanup time, or a hand raised to start the line for lineup time. These are all additional ways that you can cue to students that it's time to do something in a really sensitive way that meets more of their sensory needs. So just an overview before we jump into some specific transition activities that you can use. Here are a bunch of ones that we won't address specifically, but that you could definitely use. You can use games or trivia or music. Singing a song, especially with younger kiddos, is helpful. And it might even give them the content that they need about what to do, like a lineup song or a cleanup song. Posting the written schedule, we can't understate that enough. Again, we want multiple ways for students to understand what's going on, and verbally alone is not enough. The schedule of what's happening should be posted, and if the students are younger, it should include pictures so that they can follow along and understand and really internalize what's expected of them. You want to remind students of the schedule. Of course, you're going to tell them when it's time to transition inside, or when it's time to go from reading time or homework time to the next activity. But you also want to review the schedule as a whole, what's going to be expected for that day or for that week. You should say what you expect, show what you expect, and give the students time for practice. So if you're having any struggles with transitions, you could even play a game of Simon Says, or practice lining up, give 5 extra minutes before it's time to line up to come inside, and have all the students practice lining up and joining you, and then send them off again, and then do whatever transition signal or activity you need to, and then have them line up again. Give lots of positives and praise for when they're able to do it with a kind of lower stakes environment. For students, you can use transition objects. Younger kids, maybe that's a little object that they keep with them, that's something special to them, like an eraser shaped like an animal. For older kids, it could be, can you hold the backpack or the clipboard, or an object that you need to be brought inside? You could give that to them so they have a real sense of purpose while they're going through the transition. That relates really closely to the next bullet point, which is giving responsibility or roles. You could have a line leader, you could have someone at the caboose, someone who's holding the door, and that helps, again, give that sense of purpose and ownership over the transition, and will minimize the likelihood of those behavioral challenges happening during a transition. And at any age, you could do a read aloud. It could be a picture book, it could be a chapter book, and during those periods of more downtime, you could start reading that book to get the kids using their imaginations and have something to think about. Plus, it's a great connection to their academics and literacy. Now, before we go on to the next slides with some of those more concrete activities and strategies that you can use, I would suggest having a pocket of tricks. When I was new to the field, I wrote down my favorite activities on a little note card that I kept literally in my pocket. And that way I could pull it out if I needed a quick activity or an idea to support my kids when we were moving from one thing to the next, or had 5 minutes before it was time to go on to the next activity. So let's jump in and review some games and activities. For some of you, these may be repetitious and you've played them many times. For others, there might be some They might all be new, but I hope that you can rediscover or discover some new games and activities that you can use during a transition. Follow the leader. So one kid closes their eyes or leaves the circle area, while the other students choose a leader to establish a pattern of clapping or movement. All the kids will copy that pattern, and the one with their eyes closed or who has left the group, when they return, needs to guess who the leader is. So who's leading the group and what movement or clapping pattern that they're using. Obviously, they have to use their visual scanning skills. Also, they have to be really paying attention to their group. They might be learning the group members' names as well. So this is a great activity to do during downtime. It also fits even with social distancing, and you can do it inside or outside. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a circle shape, although that does help. Reassemble. I found this one to be really interesting to do. So there's one person who's it, and all the other kids that you have in your group stand in a certain order. They could definitely be 6 feet apart if you needed them to be. And then that it person closes their eyes for a moment while the kids mix up in that order, from left to right or in a certain part of your area. And then the person who's it opens their eyes and has to put the kids back in order of how they were originally. Again, this would be great for supporting those visual scanning skills and also learning names in the group. And it would work on working memory, which is an executive functioning skill. Backwards. You could write or say a word backwards, one letter at a time. The children try to guess what the word is. You could even, like it says, write or say it. So the kids are working on their working memory, working on their literacy skills, and paying close attention. Let's practice this one together. So I'm going to reveal one letter of a word at a time. I want you to think about what the word might be. It's spelled backwards. L, O, O, H, C. I bet some of you are already guessing now. S, R, E. Does anyone have it? T, F, and A. After school. Nice job if you got that one. All right, let's try another one. I'll give you a hint. It's a food. I, T, T, E, H, G, A, P, S. Spaghetti. All right, let's do one more. You could use chalk to write these out outside. You could put them on a whiteboard if you have access to that, or a piece of paper, or just spell the words out loud for older kids. S, N, O, I, T, I, S, N, A, R, T. Transitions. Okay, I'm going to go through the next one quickly so we can get on to the next slide. This one's a quick verbal game that you could do in a circle or a formation like a circle, even with social distancing. So a leader, either a student or an adult, picks an oddball number. You may have heard this done with the number 7, but it doesn't have to be. A different person starts with a ball, or even just starts saying the number 1 and passes it in any direction. So maybe either left or right, clockwise or counterclockwise, or using a visual aid with a ball. And the kids continue to pass and count until the oddball number is reached. When you get to that number, or any number ending in that digit or a multiple of that digit, they need to pass the number in the opposite direction. So this requires teamwork, working memory, executive functioning skills, and it can be a great way to talk about, making mistakes and moving on. Freeze dance, a good old favorite. They can move, shake, jump to a song, and then they freeze when the music stops. This is also great for practicing impulse control or even listening to adults. So then you could freeze the song, pause, and remind them of the transition, clapping, or phrase that you use so that they're paying close attention to you, and then they can resume dancing when the music starts again. This is an oldie but a goodie. You could have students line up by the first letter of their first name, the first letter of their last name, their letters in their middle name, their birthday, their age. You can also increase challenge with maybe a silent fairy or one student who has to close their eyes. And this can definitely still be done while social distancing and make it a fun way for kids to line up and transition from one thing to the next. Rock, paper, scissor in a circle. You could also do it in evolution when kids are playing different pairs within a group. So all the kids can form a circle. They could be 6 feet apart, and they will either make a rock, paper, or scissors with their left and their right hand, and it doesn't have to be the same. And they're competing with whichever hand is closest to their left or right hand. You're out when both of your hands are out. So at the beginning, you'll have both hands up and you can play with your right hand and your left hand versus the people who are to your right and left. And maybe you'll get your right hand out, but you'll still have your left hand, which is now competing against both people on either side of you. There's a variation on this where everyone forms a rock, paper, or scissors with their body. So a rock would be curled up on, in a little ball close to the ground. A paper would be just your arms up and extended, and scissors kind of in the formation of a jumping jack. And everyone competes against the person in the middle of the circle. So they pick rock, paper, scissors, and everyone in the circle around them picks rock, paper, scissors, and it's a big group game of rock, paper, scissors. Dice movements, I really like this because you can form it to the developmental needs of your group, and all you need is a dice. So your group members can help you come up with what the number corresponds with. So maybe 1 means slow motion, 2 means fast forward, 3 means jump, and so on and so forth. You can roll the dice during transitions or different times of the day to see what it lands on and how the students will be acting while the dice is in effect. We would do this at my summer camp for the whole camp during lunch periods, and it was definitely funny to see all the students trying to go slow motion to get their chicken nuggets and tater tots for lunch. Some of them got really into it, and I think it's a great way to help kids be more mindful during a transition. 2 things at once, just as it sounds. You can have kids maybe rub their bellies and tap their heads, or do other physical movements of 2 things at once, giving them a little challenge during a transition. Mad Libs, there's some free ones that you can print out online, and this helps kids work on their literacy skills because they're naming nouns and adjectives, and then you can read aloud the funny story. Plus, it infuses some humor into a transition. The table slap game, I've seen this across a lot of different camps and out of school times, although I think with social distancing, it could be a little bit tricky. But you crisscross your arms with other players and you tap your hands in order, which is now intermingled with other kids between you around the circle, and you reverse the order when anyone double taps and see how fast you can go. Buzz is similar to the number game that we were talking about earlier, but you substitute a buzz word like buzz for the number 7 and multiples of 7. If you make a mistake, your whole group starts again. So again, It normalizes making mistakes and helping the group, move on, and frustration tolerance. Contact is a really fun game in groups of 3. 1 is the word creator and 2 are the guessers. So the word creator, pretend that's me, thinks of a word, and I'd think of the word apple. I would give the guessers in my triad the first letter A. The guessers then have to think of a word, but not reveal the word itself, just a clue. Like, is it an animal? So then I would answer yes or no, and have to include an animal because that was their clue and they thought of that word, and maybe they thought of a similar word. So if I was the creator and I thought of the word apple, I gave them my group the first letter, but they guessed, is it an animal? I would say, no, it's not an anteater. If I can't think of a word that it is not based on their clue, then the guessers can say contact. If they say the same word, then I would have to give them the next letter. It sounds a little tricky, but once you would try it out in a group, I think it would make a little bit more sense, and it can get really exciting to try to guess words and be on the same page. 20 questions. One person picks someone or something to be, like an animal, a famous person, and the rest of the group answers yes or no questions until they're able to guess correctly. The hope is that within the 20 questions, there can be a correct guess. 3, the same, helping to build on group commonalities. As the leader, the adult leader of a group, you could pick 3 people that have something in common. It could be something that you can see or something that you know about the kids in your group, and see if they can guess what it is. For example, you would name 3 kids and they have to guess that they all have shoes that have Velcro on them. Another game that's kind of like hot cold would be where one student closes their eyes, another student hides a special radioactive object, and then the kid with their eyes closed uses a ruler or some other type of special object to try to find whatever the object was that was hidden in the room. In the meantime, everyone in the room can beep louder and faster as the child gets closer to the object that is hidden, and then the kids can switch places when it's found. Yoga or body spelling can be a whole movement way to get kids involved. They can use their bodies probably individually at this time to make certain yoga poses or letters or even words with their own bodies. And never underestimate the value of a good challenge. Maybe your group could learn to sing the ABCs backwards, or learn the digits of pi, or learn all the words to a speech. Use their motivation and whatever they're interested in to fuel their curiosity during transition times. For the youngers, you could give a kind of Simon Says type of movement activity, which can get some of their energy out, like hop in one place, hop on one foot, balance. And just some other ideas that I don't have individual slides for, but that you might be able to put in your pocket of tricks would be I Spy, a book box or a book bag. You could make one for each student that has books that they're interested in that can be used during a transition or during downtime. Coloring pages with the same idea. Charades, Simon Says, jokes, tongue twisters, or riddles. I know some programs have a riddle of the day that's posted near their schedule, and kids kind of think about it throughout the time that they're in the program and try to answer the riddle. Storytelling, making a song, reading poetry or making up poetry, puppet shows, beatboxing, so kind of those talent pieces that kids can show off or even work together to make. Magic tricks, juggling, or other talents. Kids can be really mesmerized by those, especially if an adult is doing it or teaching them how to. So that can help during a transition to keep their minds engaged. I hope that you gathered some of your own pocket of tricks or just reviewed some of the things that you could do during a transition, even during social distancing, and thought a little bit more about your transitions and how to make them intentional. Thank you so much for watching this. If you'd like to connect more with the Connecticut After School Network, you can like them on Facebook, follow them on Twitter, or visit our website at www.ctafterschoolnetwork.org. Thank you.